Welcome, one and all, to dandyass Gaming. Today we're going to talk about how to maneuver as the dragons in Century Age of Ashes, but unlike a lot of the other YouTube videos out there, we're going to focus on the controller function. I know there's a lot of debate on which is better, mouse and keyboard or controller, and after hours and hours and hours of practice and gameplay, I honestly think that controllers are almost as good as mouse and keyboard. There may be a slight advantage to playing with mouse and keyboard, but honestly, some of the best players that I've bumped into also use controller. It's entirely possible. You just have to be aware of a few key things. So before we dive in, let's talk about the 4 aspects of flight in this game. The 4 factors are acceleration, braking, dashing, and drift. Maneuvering in this game really just comes down to those 4 aspects and how well you use them. So let's practice a few tricks and see what they look like. Going as my boy Marauder for this one, just because, you know, he's the default dragon. So before we start showing any of the 4 elements, I do want y'all to see how fast your dragon flies without any acceleration or braking going on at all. This is your default speed as you move. Now, while this speed does provide a lot of accuracy in turning, especially around sharp corners, you will not outrun anybody and you will very quickly lose people in chases if you go at this speed. So acceleration becomes necessary eventually. How do you accelerate? Well, you hold down the right trigger. Now this is how fast you go if you just hold down acceleration. And don't worry, you can pretty much do this indefinitely. There's no stamina, you don't run out, you don't get exhausted or slow down if you hold it for too long. I can just hold down this acceleration button and move at this constant speed for as long as I want. The upside, I am moving faster. However, you may notice the downside that I am a little less sharp in my turns. So I'm more prone to bump into walls, especially if I'm in tight corridors. Second is braking. If you hold down brake, eventually you come to an almost hover. You'll notice by watching the wall that you don't ever fully stop. Like, it's impossible to actually hover in one place. You're always moving forward in this game. But this is about as slow as you can make yourself move. This can be good if you need to get your bearings or if you're really high above the map and want to look down and survey the battlefield. But in most instances, you really don't want to hover like this for too long, mostly because you become a sitting duck. Now, I mentioned dashing as the 3rd element, and you can dash by double tapping the acceleration button. You will zoom forward like this for about 3 seconds and then resume the normal fast acceleration speed. It is worth noting that every time you dash, you will use up one of your little stamina gems at the bottom. They have an official name, but I always forget what it is, so I just call them just stamina gems or stamina blips. You will lose a blip every time you dash, so keep that in mind if you're flying in areas where you can't regenerate your stamina that quickly. Because if you run out, you don't have any dash available. Now, there are ways you can restore your stamina mid-combat, and that actually is incredibly important to playing this game, but that feels like something for another video, not this one. Now, the first 3 elements are pretty standard. The tutorial covers those as well. But the 4th one, they don't teach you a lot about, but it's possibly the most important of the 4, and that's drift. Yeah, that's right, that thing you did in Mario Kart or Burnout Paradise. The only difference is, instead of having wheels and driving on the ground, you're in midair. So drift is literally 3-dimensional, and you can drift in almost any direction. How do you do it? Well, there are a number of ways you can do it. One way is just to let go of acceleration and hit brake as you go to make a sharp turn around a corner. Something like this. But that's a less optimal way to drift. Yes, I hugged the mountain really tight when I turned. I'll do it again. Yes, I can hug the mountain really tight as I do that, but you'll notice I lost a lot of speed. If I had 1 or 2 really good dragons on my butt, they would have hit me out of the sky like nothing. So how do I make a sharp turn like that without losing my speed? The best strategy that I've seen is to, without releasing the acceleration button, tap the brake button as you're turning. And now, don't tap it too frequently or else you will lose speed, but tap it in very quick intervals, like once every half second. Let me go up to a place with buildings so I can talk about what I mean. Okay, let's see what I mean here. Now you'll notice that every time I tap the brake button, every time I tap it, I can make these little sharp turns. And these little sharp turns are great for maneuvering around tight areas where you could bump into a lot of scenery. But you'll notice I'm not losing a lot of my speed because I'm not letting go of the acceleration button. That's the key. Tap brake, hold on to acceleration. This will allow you to get around those tight little corners as fast as you need to without bumping into the walls that you don't want to hit. This is also really useful for dodging fireballs as well as catching up to really pesky and avoidant dragons. Yeah, that's right. This is good in offense and defense. Now there's one other aspect to drifting that I have not talked about yet, and this one is very tricky to master, but if you can do it, you will literally be uncatchable in the skies, and that's the dash drift. Yep, you can drift in the middle of a dash. Now you will lose some of your speed, inevitably, from your dash, and that's a sacrifice you have to be willing to make. But if you time it just right, you will turn corners so sharp it would break your neck in real life. Let me demonstrate. Alright, watch this. Tight corridors, right? Tight corridors. And you notice that I'm timing my drift so that way I'm always going down. I bumped into a small one there, ignore that. But the point is, I'm able to maintain a really high speed while maneuvering around tight areas. This trick, this dash drift, is a tactic that is used by some of the best players I've ever faced against in this game. The hardest dragons to catch and defeat are the ones that can do this flawlessly around the entire map and get around with incredible speed and accuracy. If you can master this, you will be among the greatest players. Now keep in mind this will take a lot of time and practice. I've been playing this game for about 90 hours as of this recording, and I'm still figuring some of this out. Like, I'm still perfecting the technique, and I will bump into walls a few times. But even if you do bump into walls, if you can manage to hit it at the right angle, it won't slow you down so much as it will redirect you. And as long as your goal is just to get away or try to catch up to someone, heading in the general direction at the same speed really is kind of accomplishing the same goal different way. Now those are about all the basics that I have for maneuvering around as the dragon in Century Age of Ashes. It will take practice, it will take a little bit of time, but using these techniques I've just talked about, I've managed to catch up to many mouse and keyboard players who are trying to evade me. And I know they're mouse and keyboard players because I saw the kill screens, I saw the little arrow that points to them. That was embarrassing. I saw the little arrow that points from their reticle, so I know they're using mouse and keyboard, but I managed to catch them multiple times. These techniques work. You don't need a mouse and keyboard to be an amazing flyer in the Century Age of Ashes. So to all my fellow controller users out there, take heart, put practice into it, and I will see you in the skies above.